So growing up in Las Vegas, Nevada, we had local legends, town heroes, names that were synonymous with Vegas greatness. Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Wayne Newton, Siegfried and Roy, Jerry Tarkanian. Names that were basically Mount Rushmore in neon lights. So when I moved to East Tennessee, I was anxious to find out about the local heroes, the town celebrities here, and I quickly learned. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Peyton Manning. Of course, you have Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett. I loved hearing the stories of these town celebrities, these local heroes. But did you know that there are levels of legend? There are levels to celebrity status, and the upper echelon of celebrity, of local heroes, are reserved for those that only need to be known by one name. And it can either be their first name or their last name, but you only need to say one name, and you know exactly who you're talking about. Elvis, Dale Jr., Peyton, Sinatra. And when I started at the ETSU storytelling program, I was introduced to one of those local heroes, those town legends that I'd never known before. Well, in fairness, I'd heard of him before growing up, but I didn't know how deeply his roots went here in Appalachia. And of course, I'm talking about one of those one-named heroes named Jack. The more that I heard these stories of Jack and his adventures in the Appalachian Mountains of western North Carolina and East Tennessee, I began to think he reminds me of a guy that I knew growing up back home. And so I did some homework, I made some phone calls, looked on Wikipedia, and I found that my friend and Jack actually are distant relatives. And coincidentally enough, my friend's name is Blackjack. Now, don't go thinking, Tony, that's pretty racially insensitive. It has nothing to do with race at all. Blackjack was named because his dad was a semi-pro gambler from Pahrump. And he got into a little bender one night at the Golden Nugget, got in over his head, and found himself all in at the blackjack table. Now, he was holding a pair of 10s against the dealer's 19, and so he knew that he had them, so he decided he would raise the ante and bet the naming rights to his unborn son. He lost. And his son was named Blackjack as a reminder of what a horrible decision he made at that table that night. Yeah, Jack, your Jack, and Blackjack, my Blackjack, have a lot of things in common. Of course, Jack, has two brothers, Tom and Will, who always get him into trouble and are the cause of most of his misfortune. Blackjack has some siblings too. He has an identical twin sister named Roulette. Roulette got her name because her dad is a semi-pro gambler from a small little town called Pahrump who found himself on the Bender of Binion's horseshoe one night. He found himself head deep at the roulette table and decided, well, he needed to get his money back, so he went all in on black and bet the naming rights to his unborn daughter on the fact that it would go all black. Now, he went black because, well, there was sentimentality there for his unborn son's name being Blackjack, and also he was a big fan of Wesley Snipes and Passenger 57, and he said, always bet on black, and so he bet on black. And, well, his daughter was named Roulette because he lost. Now, Blackjack and Roulette, they had an older brother named Tex. His full name was Texas Holdup, but everyone just called him Tex for short. Now, I know you're thinking, Tony, you got it wrong. It's Texas Hold'em. No. It had nothing to do with gambling. Their father was a big fan of country western and loved old Billy the Kid Shoot-'em-up movies, so they named him Texas Holdup, and everyone called him Tex for short. Now, they did have a younger brother named Bob Green Jr. III. I know you're thinking, Bob Green Jr. III, that's racially insensitive. No, it's not. It had nothing to do with the fact that Bob Green Jr. III was green. He wasn't green at all, except for that one time that he ate that bad shrimp cocktail, but that's a different story for a different time. No, their dad decided after Blackjack's birth and Roulette's birth that he had a problem, and so he did a dual enrollment in Gamblers Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. And when he did that, he got cleaned up. But in the process of getting cleaned up, he found out that he wasn't very good at math, which is why he named his son Bob Green Jr. III, and also why he decided to hit on those pair of 10s when the dealer was holding a 19. It just made no sense at all. Think about it, it'll come to you in a minute. So I began reading all these stories about Jack and seeing the similarities that a lot of the adventures that Jack got into, my friend Blackjack also got into. It was crazy. Any of you remember the story of Jack and the king's daughter? Well, a classic Jack tale. Well, Black Jack had something very similar happen to him. Eerily similar happened to him. You see, Black Jack grew up in a small little town of Pahrump. It's about 45 minutes down Blue Diamond Highway outside the city of Las Vegas. He lived in a trailer park there with his dad and his 3 siblings. When he turned 21, he decided that it was time for him to pack up his things and move to the big city of Las Vegas to strike out on his own and find his fortune. Now, he'd spent all day, all his life, every day, all week long, all month long, all year long, for the past 21 years, learning the art of card counting and how to play every game there was. And so he knew if he could just make it to the big city, find a spot at the casino, that he would strike it rich. So he gathered up every last dollar that he had. He said goodbye to his pops. He said goodbye to his sister and his brothers. He hopped on his old dirt bike and began making that way down Blue Diamond Highway towards the big city. Problem was, they were doing construction on Blue Diamond Highway, just like they still are to this day, and they had a detour that sent him a long way around to get to town. Jack wasn't very good with directions, and so when Black Jack went off on the detour, he detoured a little too far. And before he knew it, he was lost in the middle of nowhere, and his motorcycle was almost out of gas. He saw some building over on the side of the road in the middle of the desert that he thought might just have gasoline, so he pulled in. But he was shocked when he saw several big, large black Lincoln Town cars and men in Italian suits standing outside. He meandered his way on into the little convenience store there, hoping he could find some gasoline. They asked him what he was doing there, and he explained the story of the detour, but they thought something was fishy about this guy who called himself Black Jack, so they whisked him into a back room that was filled with dark, dim lights and cigar smoke all over. There he found himself smack dab in the middle of an illegal poker game being run by none other than the notorious crime boss Sudsy Beagle. Think about it. Sudsy Beagle was known for many things, including laundering money, murder, gambling, extortion, and many other things that had him on the FBI's most wanted list, but mostly he was in the Las Vegas Black Book, which made it illegal for him to step foot anywhere near a casino floor. But he loved to gamble, so he would set up these illegal underground poker games all over the place. Now, he was a notorious murderer, and he didn't want to be caught or found, and so he was about to give it to Black Jack when he took a liking to the young fellow. And he said, "I'll tell you what, Black Jack, I'll give you a chance to save your life if you can sit down and win a couple hands here at poker." Well, that was all that Black Jack needed, and within 30 minutes, he had cleaned the table. Well, Sudsy Beagle just figured that he'd been hustled, and he was just about to put an end to old Black Jack when one of Sudsy's men ran into the room screaming, "The feds are coming, the feds are coming!" So everyone grabbed everything that they had, including all the money that Black Jack had won, packed everything up, and headed for the cars and for the dirt road to get out of town, leaving Black Jack there with nothing. Not even enough money to fill up his tank with gas. Now, Black Jack was a really good gambler, but he wasn't a very good thinker. In fact, most of the time, those two things don't go together. But Black Jack, because he was a good gambler but not a good thinker, thought that, you know what, I'm going to track down this Sudsy Beagle guy, and I'm going to get my money that he rightfully owes me. So he did some meandering around and inquiring about town to find out where Sudsy lived, and against the advice of some people that he talked to, he made his way to Sudsy's house. Now, he was warned, "Black Jack, you won't get anywhere near Sudsy. He's got a gate out front, and he's got armed guards that patrol the perimeter 24/7. So Black Jack surveilled the place for a few days, and then he had a plan. He waited until it was late one night, and he went around to the back where there was a wrought iron fence that you could see through into the swimming pool. And he waited until Sudsy's daughter, beautiful daughter, about 20 years old, came out to go for a night swim. When she laid her towel down on the chair next to the pool and jumped into the pool, Black Jack got a long stick, reached in and grabbed her towel and pulled it back up. And then he waited there for Sudsy's daughter to get out of the pool. When she did and looked around for a towel, Black Jack was standing there holding her towel and going, "Na, na, 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 na." Well, of course, she wasn't a fan of drip drying out there, especially in the hot desert sun, and so she made a deal with Black Jack that if he would give her towel back, she would take him inside in front of her dad. Well, Sudsy Beagle was livid when he saw Black Jack inside of his house, and he was about to take care of him right then and there, but Sudsy's daughter stepped in and said, "No, he's a great guy. He went all this way," and well, if Sudsy was really honest, he was pretty impressed that Black Jack had made it that far. So he made a deal with him. He said, here's the deal, Blackjack. You can spend the night here. You can have a nice meal. You can get a good night's sleep in a nice, comfortable bed. But in the morning, I'm going to put you to the test. If you can pass 3 tests, then you can live. You pass 3 tests that I'll give you. Not only can you live, but you can have anything that you want out of my house, including the hand of my daughter in marriage. Well, Blackjack thought that was a mighty fine thing to win, and so he said sure. He ate up all the food that he could and went and had himself a nice night's sleep. Well, halfway in the middle of the night, Sudsy's daughter snuck into Blackjack's room, woke him up from his sleep. Blackjack jumped up awake and was shocked to see Sudsy's daughter sitting there only in her nightrobe. And Sudsy's daughter began to tell him, Blackjack, my dad's a crook. Don't trust anything that he says. He's trying to set you up and he wants you dead. He wants you gone. He's going to give you 2 options. Whatever you do, choose the one that doesn't make any sense. Choose the one that doesn't make any sense. But Blackjack was a 21-year-old boy, and he couldn't get past the fact that Sudsy's daughter was sitting there in nothing but her nightrobe, and so he didn't hear a word that she said. The next morning, Sudsy Beagle woke up Blackjack, took him out to the pool. He said, Blackjack, here's test number 1. A couple weeks ago, I was swimming in this pool, and I lost a ring that's very valuable to me. You need to get the ring from the bottom of the pool. You get the ring, and you've passed the test. If you can't find the ring, then you're going to be wearing cement shoes and going for a swim yourself. He said, and here's what your choice is. You can either use this industrial commercial powered shop vac right here, or you can use this rusty old tin bucket with a hole in it to try to find that ring. Well, of course, because Blackjack hadn't paid any attention to what Sudsy's daughter said, he grabbed a hold of that shop vac and began sucking away. But every time that shop vac would fill up, it would back up and shoot all the water right back out into the pool. Well, he went on and on and on, time after time after time, for what seemed like hours, until he was roasting in that hot desert sun. And then he heard a sound. It sounded like a bird in the distance. He turned around, and he saw Sudsy's daughter up in a window, saying, use the bucket. Use the bucket. The bucket? Use the bucket. Blackjack figured it hadn't worked using the shop vac, so he took that rusty, timpy old bucket, threw it in the water, pulled it back up, and wouldn't you know, the first time he did, that ring was down in the bottom of the bucket. Well, Sudsy Beagle was so upset that Blackjack had found that ring, but a deal was a deal, so he said, okay, you get you a good night's sleep, have you a good meal, and tomorrow you're going to have test number 2. Blackjack went to sleep. Middle of the night, Sudsy's daughter came in again, this time nothing but her bathrobe on. She woke up Blackjack and said, Blackjack, it's all a trick. It's all a trick. Tomorrow he's going to give you 2 things to choose from. And remember, pick the one that doesn't seem to work. Pick the one that doesn't seem to work. But once again, Blackjack was so fixated on the fact that a beautiful girl was standing right in front of him with nothing but her bathrobe on that he didn't hear a word that she said. Next morning, Sudsy Beagle woke up Blackjack. He threw him in the back of the car, drove him out to the middle of the desert. Out in the middle of the desert, there was sitting a bobcat excavator and an old shovel. And he said, buried here in the desert is something that's really important to me. You have until the end of the day to dig a hole and find that special treasure. Or if you don't, you've just dug your own grave. So now you can choose, do you want to use the bobcat excavator or do you want to use this old rusty shovel? Choice is yours. And because Blackjack hadn't heard a thing that Sudsy's daughter said, of course he jumped right on that bobcat and began digging. And he dug, and he dug, and he dug, and he dagged, and he digged, and he digged, and he dug, and he dagged. But he didn't find anything. It was getting so hot in that desert sun, it must have been 140 degrees. And he could have sworn that at the end of the day, he started seeing a mirage. Only the mirage in the distance looked a whole lot like Sudsy's daughter. And she was saying, use the shovel. Use the shovel. And everyone knows that mirages never lead you the wrong way. So Blackjack picked up that shovel and he began to dig. And wouldn't you know it, 2 minutes later he hit something. Brushed it off and there was a small little safe that he found right there in the desert. Well, he took that back to Sudsy Beagle, and Sudsy was livid. He was furious that Blackjack had passed test number 2, but a promise was a promise. So he said, you get you a good meal, a good night's sleep, and tomorrow morning is your 3rd and final test. You pass that, and you can have anything you want and the hand of my daughter. But if you don't pass that test, you're taking a long dive off of Hoover Dam. Well, Blackjack didn't want to take a dive off of Hoover Dam, but he sure liked that nice comfy bed, and so he had a meal. He went to sleep. Halfway through the night, Sudsy's daughter came in, but this time she learned her lesson. She wore sweatpants, a big baggy t-shirt, and a hoodie. And he said, listen, it's all a setup. My dad's not going to give you anything. We've got to get out of here, and we've got to get out of here now. So what you need to do is you need to sneak down to the garage. Go past all of the Maseratis, the Lamborghinis, the Lincolns, the Porsches, and find your way to the old beat-up rickety moped. They won't be able to hear that start up. You walk it out of the garage, I'll meet you outside, I'll hop on, and we'll make our escape. Well, Blackjack liked that idea because he liked his head and didn't want to lose it, and he wasn't too fond of the idea of jumping off of Hoover Dam. So he snuck down, he walked past the Maseratis, past the Porsches, past the Lamborghinis, and he found that old beat-up moped. He slowly pushed it out, fired the thing up. Sudsy's daughter hopped on the back, wrapped her arms around Blackjack, and they zoomed their way out of the house, down a dirt road, and made their way off towards the big city. Now you would think that they would ride off happily ever after. But no, because you see, Sudsy Beagle woke up that morning. He saw that his daughter and Blackjack were gone. They were on a moped, which doesn't go very fast, and the daughter didn't know that that moped had GPS tracking on it. So Sudsy Beagle pulled up the GPS tracking on his phone, grabbed his guys, they hopped in a Lincoln Continental, and they began taking off after Blackjack and his daughter. They saw him coming up the road, and Blackjack began to panic, thinking they were about goners. They were both going to die. Well, Sudsy's daughter had a little trick up her sleeve. She reached in her backpack, pulled out that old rusty pail, took it and threw it back behind him, and as soon as it hit the ground, wouldn't you know, a river opened up. Sudsy slammed on the brakes, stirred that car, spun it all around. Blackjack was amazed at what he'd just seen. He didn't believe in magic, but he couldn't deny what he just saw with his own eyes. But it wasn't long before Sudsy Beagle had that car turned around, gone through the river, and was right back on high on their tail. This time his daughter pulled that old shovel out, took it back, threw it out behind him. When it hit the ground, it began to dig and dug and dig and dug and dag and dig and dug until it had made a canyon as big as the Grand Canyon. Blackjack spun that moped around to see what would happen as that Lincoln Continental went head first into that big ditch, never to be seen again. And Sudsy Beagle's just another Las Vegas mob boss buried somewhere in the desert. At that moment, they hopped on the moped, turned around, headed off for the big city, and now they lived happily ever after. So you see, there are a lot of similarities between Jack, your Jack, and my friend Blackjack. I'm not sure if they ever met each other in real life, but if they did, I could only imagine what that family reunion was like. Thank you guys.